Alright guys, now that I got the HPI off of the stand, I got the, I need to move this out of the way so I don't trip on it. But now that I have the Baja off the stand, I now have the Xmaxx on the stand, and we'll be able to go through the Xmaxx faster because a lot of my viewers are probably more familiar with the Xmaxx. So the Xmaxx, of course, body comes off with this nice latch system right here, and then this piece right here just tucks right up underneath the shock tower. So it's very convenient. This is by far the easiest RC body to take on and off of any size, any scale truck. The entire chassis is like, the whole chassis is plastic, or it's nylon reinforced plastic, but nonetheless, there's a lot more plastic going on with the Xmaxx compared to the Baja. This is a 1200 kV brushless motor in this one. One of the downfalls, I do have to say, comparing the two of these, one of the issues I've had with stock Xmaxxes is that stock VXL8S, which is the ESC this comes with stock, I've had issues with. I've gone through 3 of them. 2 of them have crapped out all of a sudden. The other one just had issues. I had to send it back. So upgrading the ESC is always a good idea on this machine because this right here is a Hobby Max 6 ESC, and it fits down in there nicely. And it's just a much better ESC. It can really regulate more power, and it's just a much better ESC than the stock VXL8S. It's more reliable. It's more durable. Now stock, this would have some Valenian fans, but it would be a dual motor fan like this, and it would sit on top of this heat sink. So there is a heat sink on this motor that just helps keep it cool, and then on top of that there is a Valenian fan, which is a dual motor fan. So it kind of looks like this, but this is a Castle one. But nonetheless, kind of looks similar to this. Now, the Xmaxx, I know, the servo's not as big, so this is not going to be a 1/5 scale size servo, like on the Baja. But this one also has an upgrade 2085X, which is a metal gear. So that's another disadvantage with this machine. This machine has a plastic geared servo stock. So, when you're paying $900 for a machine, and then on top of that, it doesn't even have metal gears inside of the servo, I think that's a problem. I mean, when you're paying that much for a machine, it really should have metal gears. This servo then costs over $100 just for this 2085X, which is a Traxxas servo itself. It's just an upgrade part, so it's a way for Traxxas to make more money. But obviously, to keep this thing cheaper, they went with plastic gears. And some people maybe don't have issues with it. If they don't crash badly and the servo saver saves them on some of those crashes, maybe they won't damage the gears, but I've damaged all the gears. I've damaged all of my 2085 servos, so that's been kind of a constant issue. I've damaged multiple of my 2085 servos with the plastic gears. Also, on here, the gears in the Xmaxx, they're just not going to compare to a 1/5 scale size machine. I think the mod is those are a different pitch on those gears. I don't even know what they are, but these are mod 1 gears. The stock gear that's on this, you can have issues with the spur gear because the spur gear is kind of made out of a cast metal. The original 6S one actually had a plastic spur gear, but when they upgraded it to 8S, they finally put a metal spur gear on, but it was a cheap, like, cast metal spur gear, so you can still strip the teeth right off of it. That's a good thing to upgrade, so that, I guess, is a downfall of this machine. This is a 6S version that's been upgraded, but an 8S one would have a torque biasing center diff right here. I have a hardened steel output drive, so basically just a large steel gear in there, just to beef up this drivetrain. I've switched out this one, as you can see, for a lot of stainless steel screws. This would not come stock with stainless screws. They would be machined, so if you don't like the look of rust, machine screws are just going to rust. That's just what's going to happen unless you switch them out for stainless. A few of the screws like that one, some of them are still the machine screws, but a lot of them have been switched over. Now, suspension. The suspension is probably where the Xmaxx is unmatched by like any other RC. The suspension cushiness and the travel that this machine has is ridiculous. So that's why I say this is such a good jumping RC. Because it really is. It really jumps super well. You can do backflips with it. I mean, you can still nosedive and land badly, though. So you do have to be careful. If you come down really hard, the rear hubs are likely to break, or suspension arms will break. It doesn't seem like the actual knuckles break as much. It doesn't seem like the knuckles or that hub breaks as much. It's more usually the suspension arm. Sometimes that one. The knuckles probably rarely the one that breaks. But the rear hub is kind of prone to breaking. Right along where the hinge pins are, those can break. Your pins right on your drive shafts, those can break right there. So that's all stuff you got to watch out for. The 8S one does have upgraded gears, so the gears in this, the differentials in this, the differentials in this are very strong. So, and when it comes down to power, this has a very similar power. I mean, the way the power comes on with the electric RC is way different. It's completely different than a gas-powered RC, because the gas-powered, you have to wait for the clutch to engage. This, it's instant torque right from the get-go. So if you want something that's clean, easy, convenient, get an Xmaxx. If you don't mind getting a little dirty, dealing with a little bit of carb tuning, and actually feel like you're driving an actual automotive machine, go get an Hpi Baja. You can get them for $550 for the Rovin ones, $1,000 for one of the HPI ones if you can get a hold of them right now. $1,200. They have some different variants. I know they have a Mustang one. They have a bunch of different ones, but that's the thing. This having clones, there's knockoff parts you can buy, clone parts. Xmaxx doesn't have any clones. There's no other brands that are making a knockoff of the Xmaxx, because we know what would happen. Traxxas would sue them. So they were able to make knockoffs. The Low C5T, which is another 1/5 scale that I have, that also has knockoffs from King Motor and Rovin made, which you can also interchange the parts. So the parts on that actually don't cost a ton, and on the Xmaxx they don't cost a ton either. So replacement parts are both fairly reasonably priced. Now the Xmaxx is a 3-piece chassis. There's the front bulkhead, the center main chassis, and then the rear bulkhead. So there's an upper and a lower bulkhead on the front and the rear, and then those slide together, and there is a center drive shaft that runs underneath, the aluminum drive shaft, which I know is another thing that can be prone to bending, because if you crash really hard, if the chassis flexes, that can bend that aluminum, because it's a hollow aluminum center drive shaft that connects the rear to the front, or sorry, the front and the rear. With the Xmaxx is a wheelie machine, but like I said, you're limited on the amount of time that you can run it because it's battery powered. You can run 8S, but you also have to be more aware of your temps compared to a gas powered machine. Got to be more aware of your ESC temps, your motor temps. You're not going to be able to run it as long. But this is also waterproof. So this has a waterproof receiver. This is a waterproof ESC, the stock VXL one. The VXL 8S, that is also waterproof. This motor must be somewhat waterproof as well, 1200 kV. This is the stock motor, because you can actually submerge these in water and they're supposed to be okay. So as long as your receiver box is sealed, I have had receivers go out, and I wonder if it's because the seal wasn't proper or there was a little gap in the seal or something, because I've had 2 of my Traxxas receivers go out. But as long as this is sealed properly, the receiver box is waterproof. The receiver box is not waterproof on this. Receiver box isn't waterproof. The servos I don't think are built to be waterproof. That's the other thing. The 2085 is at least a waterproof servo on the Xmaxx. So everything is waterproof on the Xmaxx. So if you want to go through bashing through mud and stuff, Xmaxx is the way to go, because then once you're done, you can rinse it off with water. This, when you're hosing this down, if you do hose it down, you got to be very careful when you're working around the motor, because if the motor gets mud on it, that's something there you almost have to wash it with like a cloth by hand, because you can't go pouring water all over this motor, especially up here near the carb or the air intake. So you got to be very careful when you're using a hose washing this down, but you could wash it down still. But like I said, some of these pieces aren't going to be quite as waterproof. Now, as for a size comparison, I think we've basically gone over the Xmaxx. I can't think of much else with the Xmaxx that there is to talk about, to be honest with you. So I'm going to take it off. We're going to put these side by side, and I just measured the Hpi Baja, and that measured in at 31 inches from back of the wing to the front. Now the Xmaxx, a little bit different. That's like 30-ish, but also I have this T-bone racing front bumper, which sticks out further. So the Xmaxx could actually be longer when you count it from way back there on the wheelie bar, and you go all the way up to tip here. That actually makes it a longer machine. But if you kind of just consider it bumper to bumper, they're actually probably both about the same, 30 inches long, I'd say. So if you go from the tip, very front of that, to the back of the wing, that's about 31 inches. This is probably 31 inches going from the front bumper to the rear. They're very similar. As you can see, main difference is you can see the Baja. Let me move that forward a little bit. The Baja has a longer wheelbase. So these wheels the wheelbase is at least probably 4 inches, 3 inches at least longer than the Xmaxx. So as you can see, both large machines. The Xmaxx is going to have more when it comes to clearance. As you can see right here, there's the clearance of the Xmaxx compared to the clearance of the Baja. But the Baja still has decent clearance, to be honest with you. And look at that. It still has decent suspension travel before that smacks the ground. Now for the width, I want to say the Xmaxx is going to be wider. I did measure that out. That's 18 inches wide from tire to tire. This right here, let me measure this real quick. Alright guys, so I just measured out the width of the Xmaxx. That's sitting right around 20 3/4 inches wide compared to this being about 18 to 18 and a half. So this is 2.5 inches or so wider than this. 2 to 3 inches. It doesn't look like that much though. Like, the width obviously is going to go to the Xmaxx. The length is going to go, the wheelbase length anyway, is going to go to the HPI. Alright, so if you guys are seriously considering one of these machines, I think both of them are really good machines in their own right. Like I said, this comparison, they have a few things in common. A lot of things are different between the two. I understand. Some people might not be, might not think these are comparable, but they're both large machines, as you can see. They're both similar sizes when it comes to length. They both can do a lot. They can go over a lot. This can still conquer a lot of stuff despite it being rear-wheel drive. If you like this video, go ahead, hit that thumbs up button. Also, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Baja and Xmaxx videos in the future. All right, later guys.